to part 5 of this thing we're doing. Oh my gosh, you guys, I'm not awake yet. It's only 8:24 in the morning. I just got up at 6:30, I think it was. Yeah. Went out, did my walk jog thing this morning. Came back a little bit ago. I literally haven't had coffee yet. I have not had breakfast yet. I just I'm here, but I'm not awake. I'm not a morning person. Um, so yeah, we're working on Francis, which is a commission I'm doing for Cardine on DeviantArt. Um, it's been, I guess, wow, wasn't last week. 2 weeks ago is when we started this. And this last week was spring break here, so I wasn't here. And so nothing got done. And we're back now to start coloring this. I know I said in the last video, in part 4, when we finished up the sketch, that I was going to go ahead and flat this offline. But I decided not to do that. Because although a lot of the flatting process can be really boring, because you're just sitting there like painting things in and erasing, um, I wanted to kind of show you the process of figuring out the lighting and the color palettes and stuff like that. Because I remember back in the day when, God, I make this sound like it was so long ago, when I started doing art, um, one of the things that just baffled me, absolutely baffled me, was how people pick their color palettes. And, where did they decide how this lighting worked? And I couldn't get it. And I would stare at pictures forever and just go, like, well, what made them pick green here? How, how did they know that that was going to work in this? And now that I'm a little bit more experienced, um, I've kind of figured out these things, these methods. Let's see. Good morning, Buffy. Did you guys hear her meow? Buffers, what's up? What? Sorry, I talked to my cats. um, oh, what am I doing? What am I doing? Okay, we are gonna go ahead and I want to kind of show you guys this lighting thing. How I've figured this out. Um, because y'all are gonna be like, oh, okay, I get it. This is that I understand. Hopefully. Okay, so we're gonna use the black and white here because we're gonna figure out the lighting situation and the different tones of the palette I'm gonna work with. Sounds so involved, but it's really not that hard. I always start with kind of a medium gray because you always start with your mediums. Um, the reason being is when you start coloring a picture, if you start with colors that are really dark, the overall entire form of your picture is going to be really dark. If you start with really light colors, the whole thing's going to end up being light colors. I like my pictures to be sort of in the medium range of tones, medium saturation, and then I work from there to, branch things out. And it's just simpler. It turns out better when you're not, staring at this thing that's like super dark or super bright. It's easier to work in the medium tones of things. And you can always adjust things later. If you're like, oh, this is really dull and I want this darker and I want it more saturated, well, you can fix that later. But if you start out in that range of really saturated, really dark colors, it's extremely difficult to lighten them up later. So we start in the middle. Um, okay. So, what, Buffy? She's talking to me like crazy. What? Oh, you have a loopy. I'm not gonna play fetch with you right now. If you bring it here, I'll throw it. But that's it, just once. You're such a good kitty. Okay. Yeah, my cat wants to play fetch. You know those little plastic loops that you find on the top of milk cartons and like Powerade bottles and soda bottles? She loves them. I call them loopies. And if you throw one, she'll fetch it. She'll bring it back and she can do it for hours. It's so funny. Um so yeah. Okay, I'm gonna shut up. Um so what you're looking for to do in oh god, my brain is not working, you guys. It is way too early in the morning. I should have played Skyrim for an hour. My brain would have woke up. Um, okay, what was I saying? I need coffee. Oh, okay. When you're working in black and white, what you're trying to do is you want to find a good range of tones to work with. I mean, I could do my whole picture in medium gray tones, but that would be really, really boring. You want that contrast of the really light colors and the really dark colors and a lot of, medium tone colors. So, um, where's my, I want some dark colors. I'm just gonna go ahead and, there's a plane. Yay! I'm gonna paint in some dark tones, and we're gonna figure out how this lighting's gonna work. So, since I've made her, and this does not have to be accurate, this is all gonna be deleted. This is just for reference. Keep that in mind. So I'm just gonna work kind of fast. Um, since I've sort of made the background this medium tone, and it's not gonna stay that way. I never have completely flat tone backgrounds. Um, No, this is not how I'm gonna do this. I know what I'm gonna do. Okay. Ah! No! Oh, bad. Okay, we're gonna do this the fast way. You'll notice I do this on a lot of my pictures. You guys will have seen this before. As far as backgrounds are concerned, I always try to do a little bit of a vignette. Because it makes the character stand out. So, let's see. Black for most of the background. I go ahead and do some medium tones just where the main figure of the body is. Grab my blend brush. I need this. And again, this is just sort of figuring out how the lighting scheme is going to go. This is not actually going to be used. This will be in color later. But I need a bigger brush. I want to kind of show you guys how I figure out my lighting, and this is really useful to do when you're not really sure what you're doing, because you should always have some idea of the direction of your lighting when you work so you don't confuse all your shades. And I found if you do these little quick speed paints to sort of figure it out, it helps a lot later when you're coloring and you're like, what was I doing? You know, this doesn't look quite right. Whatever. Okay, now we pick my really bright colors. And we draw contrast to the important elements of the picture. For instance, I want her face to stand out. Um, Actually, I want her whole upper torso to stand out. Because this is the main focus point of the image. We can also ground it by drawing it down that way. So we go ahead and blend that in. Basically what I've done is I've added a little bit of a brighter streak here in the very center of the picture where all the interest is. Let's go ahead and add a little bit more. I'm saying, look at me. The face is the focal point. And now when you look at all of this, the contrast, your eyes are immediately drawn to the center figure of the picture, but they're also drawn very specifically to her face because that is the lightest part of the image. See how this works? Okay, so once we kind of have our background in, we can go and figure out the rest. In keeping with her image, I should probably use a paintbrush for this. I want to keep the main interest around her face and this little halo of light up here. Let's see. Because this is a separate part of the figure from the background, it needs to be done separately. So I'm just going to quick block in. I probably should have used an actual brush for this. The figure herself. To show that it is not... God, this is so messy, you guys. It's okay. All that's important is that we're figuring out the light. So I'm just going to block her in. See, she has all this hair here. Sword. Wings. Now, here's one of the reasons we do this separately. Because one, we don't want this to fade into the background like it was a second ago. It'll end up looking like really hazy if you sort of let it. Because with the same color scheme, it's just, yeah, it looks like it's part of the background. It's not going to stand out that much. So I separate it. The other reason, and you'll see this up by the wings and down by the feet, is it really makes the figure stand out when, like up here, even in this dark area, you probably can't see that, it's kind of dim, the wings stand out from the darkest part of the image. The boots stand out from down here. Okay, so this is the backlight. Now, this draws our focus here to the center of the image. But what we're going to do is we are going to make the figure stand out with the lighting by bringing it down from another direction. Let's see. I want something to write on. I'm going to do this. We're going to have a lighting that sweeps down from the top but comes towards the camera a little bit. Because I want to be able to backlight her wings. So we're going to do this. This is just to remind me that the lighting goes this way. That's the only purpose of that right there. Okay, and we're going to take our light color and we're going to figure out how this is going to work. Okay, medium tones, well, medium light tones. Let's see. I want the light to be coming through her wings. So we're going to go ahead and lighten up the very center of her wing panels. Kind of, it was, especially on things like this where you're looking through a membrane, you want to leave the edges a little darker. It gives it more depth to the membranes. So we're keeping just the light in the very center of the panels, and we're leaving dark around the edges. We go ahead and block these in. Now keep in mind that if we're using this light source behind her head, the very lightest section of these panels are going to be down here. These upper portions are not going to be quite as light because the focus point's down there, not up here. So we're going to go ahead and fade out the light on that upper part. We will come back and add a little bit more light down here. But let's go ahead and do that. And this will look much better when it's in color. This is skin 2. Okay. I know I'm spending a lot of time on these, but I swear there's a purpose behind this. You'll see when I'm done. I kind of want to show you how this works out, why this works. Okay, come back with a lighter color, a little bit smaller brush. This is going to be really bright because we're assuming the light is somewhere around here. So now you'll see I've made this inside part of the skin here, a lot brighter right here and right here, and then it fades as it goes up, and it makes her wings look a little bit more see-through. Okay. Now let's figure out her. We are going to give this a little bit of a backlight. Yeah, let's do it with a pen. Because she's standing in front of this this light source. So there's going to be light here. Okay. Now we need to show the light that's coming from behind her. and how it affects the rest of her form. So, light bouncing off the tail comes down from there. Light on this hip. A little bit of backlighting. Light around the outer edges of the hair. Light coming from beneath and over here. A little bit of lighting there. A little bit of lighting off that leg. And glinting off this part of the steel. Not quite that much. Okay, and I want to bring in a little bit of see-throughness on her skirt, where the light's sort of sleeping through the fabric, just a little bit. Okay, so that's our backlighting. Now we are going to do the top-down lighting. This is going to be the really bright stuff, the stuff that's hitting the top of her head to make this stand out. So, let's see. There's going to be some lighting on her horns, and this is probably a little bit too light for just this moment, but that's okay. Lighting on her hair. Because all of this is going to have light cast on it. Lighting on this cheek. On her nose. Chin. Blah blah. This doesn't have to be perfect. It's all going to be worked on later. I just want to kind of show that this is going to be lit up. Good enough for now. Okay. So, light on this arm. Light on these knuckles. Little bit of light down through here. More light here. Give some volume to her chest. A little bit of light on this arm. Light. Light. Let's see. There's going to be some light through here, but a lot of that's going to be in shadow, so I'm not going to worry too much about it. Important thing is this bulk of hair here. Through the top of her head. Okay. Now when we get down to the lower part of this, a lot of this is going to be in shadow because her arm crosses right here and creates a shadow on her body. Also, just the way she's standing is blocking a lot of light from the backlight and this, which is coming straight down on her body. So we're gonna add a little bit of light down here because this metal is gonna pick up a lot of light just by its very nature. And we're gonna put a little bit of light on her legs because they're at an angle to where the light probably would pick up a little bit. Not a lot because most of this is in shadow. Now this is mostly going to be shadow. This is going downwards. There might be a little bit reflecting off her boots. But most of this is going to be in shadow. We can add a little bit more light to her tail to bring it out. And we want to add a little bit of light glinting off this because it's metal. And it's just going to pick up ambient light like crazy. And a little bit of light shading on her skirt just so it stands out. And we're going to pull the eye downward with it. Okay, there is not going to be a lot of light on this back skirt, just where the light kind of seeps through from the background. This is all going to be in shadow because there's no light getting in between this skirt and that skirt. It's just not going to happen. Now, if we get our brights, make the important parts a little bit brighter, draw our eyes back up to the head. So we got our brights on the hair around her face. I need a brighter bright here. So we're going to use a shadow on her face and around the very, very closely surrounding bits to draw your eye back to the focal point here. We want some very bright light on her sword because it's going to kind of cut off our focal point. It says this is where the light ends. Quit looking everywhere else. This is the important part. Let's see. Okay. It's not perfect, but now you see all the important bits of light in this picture are going to be right around the face and this center point that we kind of handed out. Yeah, it works. Okay. So, let me think. Do-do-do-do-do-do. Do-do-do-do. Trying to think, what was I just thinking? I had this thought that went through my brain and then it went right out the other side. Because now I can't remember what it was. Oh, the shadows. Um, don't forget to put them in. uh, these are important and easy to forget. Like one, there's going to be a shadow under her chin. You can't avoid it. There's no light here. You want it to stand out, so it's got to be a little bit darker than everything else. Here's the thing about light, and this is where a lot of people go wrong. Not all shadows are created equal. They're not necessarily all going to be really, really dark. To sort of give you an example, let me darken this up a little bit. Shadows only exist where light exists. If there is no light, there is no shadows. It's kind of this gray, dusky middle ground. So, like up by her face here, where the majority of our light is also where the majority of our shadows are. Totally screwing up bits of this, but that's okay. It's okay. So, wherever there's really, really bright light, there's also going to be very dark shadows. So I'm going to go back through here and darken up the shadows up here in the very lightest parts of this picture. Let's see, we need a shadow from the sword. So what I'm going to have it do is I'm going to have it curve over her breasts and down her arm. This light is falling sort of in that pattern. Let's see. There's going to be some pretty dark shadows. I am losing my voice, yay! Under this arm. Okay. Yeah. There's going to be some dark shadows in the palms of these wing hands things. So the majority of the very, very dark shadows are going to be up here by her face because that's where the majority of our light is. If that makes any sense to you guys. When you get down to... Hold on, let me put the shadows on this arm. When you get down to the lower part of this picture, notice there isn't a lot of light. So there isn't as much shadow. There's a little shadow. I mean, you want to be able to define things. Like, I know the bottom of this kneecap is going to be a little bit darker. But you won't see me going into great detail down here. Because it isn't needed. If there's no light, there's no shadow. There's a shadow from her tail. Okay. And what that does is it creates... Let me get a pen so I can write all over this. It creates a sense of contrast where your eye immediately goes here because all the contrast is focused in that portion of the image. Down here, it isn't that important. I mean, we don't really care about her feet or the tops of her wings. So you'll notice there's very very little contrast in these areas. All the shadows and stuff are pretty much the same. There's a little bit of light, there's a little bit of shadow, but you aren't going to see a lot of detail. You're only going to see the detail up here where all the contrast is. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is how you use light and different tones to draw the focus of your picture. I'm sure there's some of you who've never even thought of it before, and you're like, oh, I get it. That makes so much sense. And some of you are gonna be like, yeah, I know that. Would you get to the coloring already? But this is a very important lesson that I wanted to show people because I'm constantly talking about it in my red lines, and I think a lot of people just, they don't get it. They're like, oh, yeah, I see what you did and it's really pretty, but I don't get how to do it. Well, now you know. You're basically using the tones of your pictures and the contrast to grab your attention up here. Now you could do this with color too. I'm not going to do this really well. But let's say, oh, how to do this. This is just an example. I swear. Don't think this is permanent. And there's like no blue in this. Okay, so just forget about it right now. Her outfit's red. Oh no, no. But I kind of want to give you an idea of what I'm talking about. I should have done just a fill layer. Whatever. So let's say, oh god, that's so much saturation. Okay. Let's say the majority of your picture is a lovely muted blue. Okay. You can use color to draw the focal point of your picture too. So let's see. The opposite of blue is orange. You should memorize these contrasting colors. It's good for you. Or no, wait. Is it orange? Yes. It's an orangey red. This is why Superman's costume works. You want something about there. This is really bright. I don't know that I want it that bright. Oh, whatever, this is the contrast. Okay, so if you're using like a really muted blue palette, what you'd want to do is you want to find a very bright orange red for contrast. Now, you do not want to use a lot of this. Believe me, it will hurt your eyes. But a little bit of this here and there will draw out focus. So let's say she's got like really bright eyes. Well, that's like crap and you can't see her eyes there, but the point is, when you look at this picture now, and I'm just going to ignore that eye, the first thing you see is this eye. Why? Because it's the one contrasting little bit of color. You immediately go, oh, wow, demonic. You can use little bits of color like that, especially if they're the contrasting color to the majority of your palette, to draw the eye somewhere specific. If I had not done that to her eye, and I had picked, you know, this kneecap, your eye immediately goes to that kneecap. Now, I don't want it down there, but you get the point. That little bit of contrasting color really draws your focus away. So if I'm going to use any oranges at all, it's going to be up here in her face. Maybe her lipstick has a slight orange tint, and her eyes have a slight orange tint. Or maybe there's an orange glint off the top of her horns. Or this jewel here has a little bit of an orange tint. Or this jewel has a little bit of an orange tint. Your eye immediately goes to this section of the picture because you're like, oh wait, that's something different. I must see it. I must look at it. So just like you can use the tones to draw the contrast, use the contrast and draw your eye to the center of your picture, you can do the same thing with colors and important bits of the picture. Now, if there was something else in this picture that was something I wanted you to look specifically at, like let's say her tail was down here stabbing somebody with a dagger, you could use the contrast down here too to also draw your eye down there. Or you can like a path where there's a bit up here and then a bit here and then a bit here and then a bit here and down here, and your eye would go connect the dots. This is how this works. So yeah, you can use the color the same way you can the tones to draw your eye to specific portions of the picture. This is so much more involved than you guys thought you were going to get this morning, huh? Now, let's see. Do I really want it this dark? This is the great thing about digital coloring is you can adjust. I can say, oh, I want more contrast. Or you can adjust the colors. You can brighten this picture up quite a bit and do it that way. Or, you know, you could take all the contrast out. Make all the contrast really heavy, although I would not recommend that. You can darken this picture quite a bit. But if you darken it, you also have to take the contrast down. So there's all kinds of things I could do this. If, let's see, I want to lighten this picture up a little bit, because I need to make my contrast a little heavier. So now I went from that to that. And that's what I would want to work with. I want my colors to sit right around this. The majority of the picture is this very mid-tone, but there's just bits and pieces of the really, really darker tones and the really, really bright tones that draw the contrast. So now when you look at this image, what's the first part you see? This. Right where I want your eye. It'd be really, really distracting if the majority of my light was here. Because you would immediately go, look right there, and miss the entirety of the picture. You could force yourself to look there, but you sort of want your audience to just immediately look where you want them to look. And this comes in really, really handy, and this is a little secret. If you mess something up, let's say, for instance, I'm really not very good at shading the metal in her boots, and I really don't want anybody to look there. I don't want to put the work in. I just want it to be kind of, nah, just let it slide. By drawing the contrast up here, immediately, not that many people are going to pay attention to the coloring right here. I mean, they'll see it, but they're not going to sit there and stare in it in detail like they do up here. Up here, I guarantee you, by the time this picture's done, everybody's going to be like, oh yeah, she has that really cool shading across her breasts from the sword. That's so awesome. And yeah, I really like how the light glinted off her horns, and the backlighting of her wings were awesome. Nobody's going to say, yeah, but the coloring on her boots really sucked. Because no one is going to notice that. So, you can use it to your advantage that way. So yeah, this is basically what this image is going to look like just without color. We're going to go with this sort of lighting, where there's backlighting and a lot of contrast around the face. I probably will add a little bit brighter color around her head to sort of silhouette it. Because I do want to pull the contrast in towards her head and less towards these wings, which I kind of made a little bright. So what I would do is, since I want the focus pretty much on her face right here, I would make it a little bit brighter right there and off this portion of her hair and this cheek, which I'm scribbling on, because immediately your focus is drawn into a much tighter circle around her face. I could technically put light all the way out here and down to here, but then the circle of your focus is much larger. I want my focus to be generally in this area, but more specifically here. So this is probably where I'd use my contrasting colors. Yeah, this is how it's gonna work. So, to keep myself from forgetting that this is the awesomeness that I'm gonna do, I'm just gonna keep a copy of this layer. That way, when it's all colored, I can go, wait a second, what was I doing? Oh yeah, that's where I want my lighting. That's where I want my shadows. Okay, gotta fix that. Okay, so that is my very short video for the moment. I don't know how long this is running. Um, that was a lot more involved than I thought it was going to be. So, next video we will come back and we will start picking our color palette. I will sort of show you how I pick my skin tones and make sure that all the colors go together real well because, for instance, since I love doing this, let me grab another layer. You wouldn't want, let's say, most of your picture to be this lovely red. And then really, really bright in a lot of other places. That doesn't go together. And especially when it comes to skin, you have to be really careful. If this was a super dark picture, that's not what I want to do. You don't want to pick, it's not the best tone. Here's a good example. A really, really light skin tone like that, it'll be really washed out. Like, it's just not right for this green. So when I go ahead and pick the majority of my color, which is probably going to be red, you want to pick, let's see, new layer, a skin tone that matches the red a little bit more. So I'd probably put, see, like look, if I had a really yellow skin tone, that just kind of looks sickly. That one's too pink. You want it a little bit pinker, and then you can adjust the saturation. Do you want it really saturated, really gray? Kind of got to pick the happy median. I'd probably pick something like that. And that is very different from the color I started with. You have to be really careful how you do this. So we are going to do that in the next video. We will pick our color palette. I'll kind of give you the basics of how to pick and choose your colors, figuring out the contrasting colors, and yeah, we're going to get to that. So thank you guys so much for watching. Keep your eyes peeled for the next video. It should be soon. Probably today, because I'm supposed to color something today. I feel like I haven't been doing much with scribbling, even though I've been here a while. And all this week we'll be working on the coloring of this picture. Hopefully I will have it done by Thursday. I'm not going to hold my breath, but I'm hoping so, because Friday I will have people here. And we all know how well that works. Thank you so much for watching. Comment, like, favorite, subscribe, whatever. I'm gonna go jump on Skype and see if anybody wants to talk to me. Whatever, I need breakfast. I'll see you guys later.